what I want to talk about is the microscopic structure of the kidney. And I specifically want to talk about the nephron. And hopefully by the time I get done telling you this story, I will have told you the anatomy of a nephron. You know how like the basic unit of life is the what? The cell, right? The basic unit of matter is the atom. Well, the basic unit of the kidney, the functional unit of the kidney is the nephron. So I'm hoping that by the time I draw this that I will accurately depict the structure of what happens in a nephron, and then also some of the hormonal influences. I've been studying that this afternoon, trying to brush up on it a little bit. So anyhow, what happens in a kidney is that your kidneys filter your blood. And so there is an incoming blood vessel, and there's what's called a glomerulus, and then there is an outgoing blood vessel. We learn afferent in and efferent. This is the efferent side. This little net-like area here is called the glomerulus. And then there is a capsule across which some of the constituents of the blood can filter across. And so this is called the Bowman's capsule, or the glomerular capsule. Let's say Bowman's. I've learned that all of my life. And so what happens is, that's interesting, is that in the blood, you would kind of think there would be a danger that if the blood filters through, that it would filter so much water, so much across, that it would collapse on this side. But there are proteins and there are blood vessels that help maintain the osmotic pressure of the blood, so that even though we might put a lot of water across here, we might put a lot of calcium ions, we might put a lot of sodium across here, we might put a lot of urea, which is part of the waste product of the breakdown of proteins. The net filtration pressure is calculated by taking the glomerular hydrostatic pressure, that's the pressure pushing out of the glomerulus, kind of like water coming out at the end of a water hose, minus the sum of the glomerular colloid osmotic pressure, that's the pressure of albumin and other proteins in the blood, and added to the capsular hydrostatic pressure, which is the resistance in the capsule itself. If the glomerular hydrostatic pressure is 51 millimeters of mercury and the glomerular colloid osmotic pressure is opposing that at 30 millimeters and the capsular hydrostatic pressure is 11, 51 minus the sum of 30 plus 11, 51 minus 41 is 10 millimeters of mercury. This is outward pressure pushing the fluid across to be filtered in the kidney nephron. Glomerular filtration rate is about 125 milliliters per minute. That is 180 liters of filtrate per day. Since the blood plasma volume is about 3 liters, that means that your entire blood is filtered about 60 times daily. A regular drink of a soda can is about 500 milliliters, so that means about 1/4, 1/5 of that volume is filtered per minute through your kidneys. So what happens is that after the main solid is filtered across into the glomerular capsule, the tube proceeds, and it is named the proximal convoluted tubule. And then what happens next is that it goes into kind of a loop like this. And some people call this the loop of Henle. And I'm going to kind of explain what happens here in just a minute. But let me go ahead and finish drawing some of the anatomy. There is a thick ascending limb that kind of comes back past this area. I'll have to draw over this, and I'll have to draw it later. This is the thick ascending limb, or the thick part of the distal convoluted tubule, the thick ascending limb. This will empty into a collecting duct over here. And then this will be, in the end, the formed urine that collects in the renal pelvis and that goes to the ureters down to the bladder, and you hold it there until you decide that it's time to let it go, to urinate. Now, an interesting thing happens when we filter everything across, not the blood cells, but all of these other elements that I told you. This kind of snakes down into the deep part of the kidney and then kind of comes back up, as you can see. And the efferent arteriole wraps around everything and helps to reabsorb a lot. Matter of fact, most everything, we'll say that would be back toward the renal vein. We're getting toward kind of venous return here. So we had input here, so this would be called an artery, and the veins, as they're heading back out, Mike could start coloring these kind of bluish, maybe that, start kind of coloring them that, to show that they're taking blood out of the area from around the nephron. And it snakes around and picks up a lot of these solutes. There we go. And then returns them back to the renal vein. So we would also know that the renal artery would have been what brought this into the kidney. Of course, there are lots of steps. There's a segmental, interlobar, arcuate arteries, long time before you get down to this level. There's a bunch of different named arteries, but that's not really the point of what I'm trying to talk about right now. So what I do want to talk about, though, is that in this distal convoluted tubule, I talked about sodium already, but sodium gets actively pumped out of this part of the convoluted tubule, and it makes the inside of the renal medulla very concentrated, so that as this water proceeds downward, as the water proceeds downward through this tubular system, if the medulla is very concentrated, this water exits. And most of these other things will exit as well. A lot of this stuff will wind up back into the medulla, and it will be absorbed back into these and make its way back through the blood, back into the circulation. So the first step of urinary filtration is that very thing. We have filtration. That's the first step. And then right in here, we can see what's called reabsorption. And this, what I'm kind of showing you here, how we have a current going downward and then a current coming back upward, is called a counter-current multiplying system. So that what happens on this side over here influences the movement of water over here. So that what happens is, as the urine goes down this direction right here, it becomes more and more concentrated. But then as we get up a little bit higher and as the sodium is pulled out, it becomes less and less concentrated as we go back up again. It's called a counter-current multiplier. Now, in real life, the thing that you have seen but have never thought about it, I had really never thought about it, How is it that a crane, these skinny leg critters, these birds, they go stand in the edge of the water? It's wintertime, it's freezing outside, and nobody told them. You ever notice that? You can't go stand in the water and your legs are going to be okay. But they have this same thing. They have a countercurrent heat exchange in their legs, and so their legs won't freeze because of this very thing. The heat is kind of conserved through this same, right here we're talking about ions, but in a bird we're talking about heat. Now, there's another hormonal mechanism that happens that I'm hoping that I can articulate this well. Let's talk about filtration, reabsorption though, and secretion. Let's talk about that first. Let's just talk about the 3 steps, and then I'll get into some hormonal action. Notice how that if you go to a new job, they are very happy to supply you a little container that they would like you to go fill and then put it back in the little window, and they'll come and get that in just a minute. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, what happens is in this final stage over here, everything that's foreign to your body, it doesn't matter if it's ibuprofen or cannabis, or it doesn't matter what it is, if it's not normally in your body kicks it out. And that's an effective thing. It's called secretion. And what's beautiful about it is your body can also kick out hydrogen ions. You happen to be very acidic by nature when you eat proteins. You remember amino acid, right? There's an acid group that gets cleaved off. Your body tends to be acidic, so your body ditches acid so that your body will have a stable pH. So one of the things we're seeing right here too, not only does the body filter wastes, it also helps maintain pH, also gets rid of a lot of poisons. Now, here's another thing to remember this. Remember, y'all are all 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Y'all are young people, but when people get older, they lose the ability to secrete so much, and they don't have a good renal plasma clearance. So that's why older people that are taking lots of medicines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 prescriptions in the medicine cabinet, that kind of thing, they need to have their kidneys tested, because if they're not secreting this stuff out, you can give them the same amount of medicine that works good on you, and what is it going to do to them? It's going to be toxic to them. They're going to suffer because their body's not ditching it fast enough. Okay, so now let's talk about this hormonal thing. And as I said earlier, I'm a little bit nervous about it, but we'll do the best we can. In the distal convoluted tubule, near the afferent and efferent arterioles, there are some cells in here, and here are the macula cells, the juxtaglomerular apparatus. I'm going to make some little cells in here, and they may be more along the areas of contact where the afferent arteriole connects with the distal convoluted tubule, and where the efferent arteriole connects. They may be more concentrated here, but think about this system and how beautiful it is. If you have a lot of water coming into your kidney, right here, but you don't have a lot of water coming through this distal convoluted tubule, your body picks up on it in a heartbeat. And this this juxtaglomerular, juxta means next to, this is called the glomerulus. These cells next to the glomerulus, they pick up on that. And they say, hey, this person doesn't have enough water, their blood pressure is dropping, and so there's this big system called the Renin-Angiotensin System. Everything from the liver, the lungs, the brain, there's all kind of things involved in this, but what they do is they tell the body to release a hormone from the adrenal glands called aldosterone, and it conserves sodium. So when sodium is put back into the efferent arteriole, water passively follows behind it and increases the blood pressure. It's a way for you to not lose blood pressure or you to become dehydrated. There's also a system, listen to this, there's also a system in your brain, in the hypothalamus of your brain, that also monitors the blood for enough water. And if there's not enough, Antidiuretic hormone is released from your posterior pituitary. Now listen close. If something is a diuretic, it makes you urinate. That's like beer. That's like caffeine. You notice after you drink a bunch of caffeine, you got to go to the bathroom. Why? It made you urinate. Diuretic. So if something is an antidiuretic, does that make you get rid of water or keep it? That makes you keep it. Now, what I've learned today, as a refresher, is that when antidiuretic hormone acts on the kidneys, it tells the kidneys to conserve water, but it does not involve sodium. One of the problems with older people is that whenever their bodies start conserving sodium to regulate their blood pressure, it actually causes blood pressure problems. And so I also was listening to some people talk about medicines, and some of the medicines block the uptake of the effect of aldosterone of uptaking sodium, and therefore help reduce blood pressure. So I think I safely got through this without making a lot of mistakes, so let me review it just for a minute. Your kidneys are precious filtration systems. Another thing that I've listened and reviewed all day today, and I haven't heard anybody talk about cortisone. But let me just say this before I finish my comments. Cortisone is the fight or flight hormone. If you're stressed out all the time, it doesn't matter if it's relational, financial, if you got the road rage, I don't know what it is. If you are constantly stressed out all the time, cortisone is another hormone that's released from the adrenal cortex, just like big aldosterone is. And somehow, I think it affects your kidneys and how your kidneys function. I think it affects your blood pressure. So remember this. It's not just all about taking a pill to fix all this. It might be about relaxing. It might be about thinking good thoughts. It might be about deep breathing. It might be, a lot of times sodium is exchanged with potassium. It might be, do you get enough potassium in your diet? Are you eating your bananas? Listen to me. If I go by McDonald's this morning, I got a biscuit loaded with sodium. If I go by and get chicken nuggets and fries, I got loaded with sodium. Every meal I went there, I got loaded with sodium. I got no potassium. How do I get potassium? I got to eat fresh fruits and vegetables to get it. So, exercise is important. But I have found with me, exercise doesn't fix my blood pressure issues. I got to deal with it in relaxation and potassium intake a lot of times. Is how it works in me. So, 3 stages to kidney function: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Those are the main steps. And then I also kind of wanted to show you in a very primitive way how that the hormones have an effect on the kidneys. And I also kind of wanted to talk to you about in your real life how that the stress in your life can affect how your kidneys function, and then in turn might affect your blood pressure in a negative way. So, thank you very much.